Okay, let me give you a quick synopsis of the weekend. Yesterday, Arsenal-Chelsea drew 1-1 at Stamford Bridge. Not a terrible game. Point for Arsenal doesn't feel so good right now. At Old Trafford, Ruud van Nistelrooy signed off in style. 3-0 win against Leicester. Still unclear if he's going to be part of the Ruben Amorim revolution. Also yesterday, Spurs. Every time you think they're onto something, then they go and lose at home to Ipswich. Sammy Smodics with a clever overhead finish. No harm as he comes to Dublin. International week is upon us. Newcastle having a little run of form now. They beat Nottingham Forest 3-1. On Saturday, if you missed it, the 8 o'clock game, Liverpool 2-0 winners against Aston Villa at Anfield. Manchester City, they are Rodri-less and rudderless at the moment. They've lost 4 games in a row, beaten away to Brighton on Saturday. They were 1-0 up, and for the first 30 minutes, it was a bit of a clinic and looked like the perfect steadying of ship performance, but the second half, not good. So table as we stand, as club football takes a pause, Liverpool 28 points after 11 matches. They're 5 clear of City, and then there are 4 teams who are 9 points off the top now: Chelsea, Arsenal, Forest and Brighton. So that is the gist. Liverpool in control. We're going to chat to Damien Delaney. Hey, how you doing?
Hi Joe, how are you?
We were just chatting rugby there before we started. Some interesting insights from you.
It's nothing that you wouldn't hear down the pub, honestly. Just musings, because I'm getting into my rugby. I'm starting to watch it now. I didn't grow up with rugby, so I don't really know what's going on with it, but I'm getting into it. I feel like the nation's behind it, so my patriotic side is coming out, and I'm making time to watch the game.
Well, that's good.
And of course, you guys on a Friday night as well, Joe. You know.
Wow, it's unmissable stuff. So, I think if City were 5 points clear, we would be declaring the league over. Liverpool, obviously, less of a sure thing. Even on Saturday, Alexis McAllister was saying, start of the season, I did not think that we'd be challengers. Have they nudged themselves now into favourites category?
Oh, absolutely, without doubt. Arne Slot's come in and not missed a beat. All the eyes of the world, the Premier League were on him to see taking over after the great Jurgen Klopp. There was a lot of pressure on him. You have to admit that he was left an incredibly good squad in a really good place. Jurgen had obviously perhaps felt that he'd come to the end of the road with the team, and maybe his energy levels wasn't quite getting the team to where it wanted to be. So he stepped aside. We mused at the start of the season about the lack of a number 6, a recognised number 6. Gravenberch has come in and give them a relative kind of safety in that position. I'm still not 100% certain on it. I'm not sure you can go the whole season with him as the defensive midfield player. But they've been brilliant, and that's credit to Arne Slot. Me saying that he was left a good squad is in no way taking away from what he's done with Liverpool. He came in the building, and the first thing you have to do is get the players' attention. Get their gaze on him, and they have to believe in him pretty much straight away. If there's any flaw, any moment where the players are going, I'm not sure about this guy, you could lose a dressing room relatively quickly, or the players might not buy into it. But they have with him, and he's got him fully on side. And he picked a side that was, remember what I just said there about Jurgen, the energy levels were down, maybe the side's energy levels were down, but he's come in and picked up straight away, and he deserves a lot of credit for that.
And energy levels aside, so I know you watched the game, obviously, against Villa on Saturday evening. In what ways are they different to a Klopp team?
They're more patient. I think they keep the ball better. They look more defensively solid. That's why my biggest fear was, not having a Fabinho type. We get to Man City and their issues with losing that. That's such an important position. But I think they retain the ball an awful lot better. They're an awful lot more patient. Jurgen Klopp perhaps I don't want to do a disservice, was a little bit more off the cuff, a little bit more, high energy, trying to initially trying to batter the opposition to submission. Then he tried to go into this patient build-up, and I don't think that was quite his bag, to be honest with you. Jurgen tried to change styles a couple of times and was pretty successful. But this guy, it is his style, and the players have just bought into it straight away. And they look good, and you can't say they're not favourites for the league this year. They absolutely are. There was
an odd dynamic at 1-0 up. So Darwin Núñez scored a very good goal, in fairness to him. It was a great break from a Villa corner. Van Dijk, kind of a real burst of energy from him, and a ball forward for Salah. He was maybe pushed over, maybe not, but in fairness to Núñez, he got on it and finished well. But then it was a kind of open-ish first half, and then start of the second half, there was a weird dynamic in the game which kind of continued for a fair chunk of it, whereby Aston Villa were sitting in their 4-4-2 shape, Liverpool in possession, centre-backs with the ball. And there was, it's like, well, we're not pressing. I mean, this is where we're sitting. And then Van Dijk quite often in possession was like, okay, well, I'm not doing anything either. And so there was like a stalemate.
And that's, I think that's sums up what I'm saying, the difference in style. I think Jurgen Klopp might have been pushing forward looking for the second third, but the Dutch style is much more, we are winning 1-0. It's up to you to come and have a go at us. Now, I suppose previously you might think 1-0 is a dangerous scoreline. You don't want to take your foot off the gas. And that's what I'm saying this Liverpool team are good at. Their ball retention and in-game management. A lot of the games this year have been like that. I mean, I did a number of games this year for the TV, and first half, kind of shrugging your shoulders, not a lot going on, and you're kind of hoping for a bit more, and then they come out the second half, and they have players at the top end of the pitch that can turn it on. And he's just got a real good balance to the team at the moment. The patience, what you referenced there, is what I admire most, that I think he's brought to this Liverpool team, that they don't panic and go looking for the second and third and then end up throwing a game away or losing a game. I actually remarked a few weeks ago that they don't start games particularly well, very slow, methodical. And I'm like, oh, come on, man, give us a bit of energy. But perhaps that's to their credit, that they don't. They want to control the game, control the tempo, and they have belief in what the manager is telling them in terms of that they will create chances further up the road or later on in the game. And invariably they do. And when you have the players at the top end of the pitch, why would you feel the need to go looking for it? Because they'll go and get it eventually.
Yeah, it's interesting. Because I think we've all noticed those kind of third gear first halves and then much better seconds. So who knows, if that pattern continues, maybe there is an element of, all right, everybody, let's feel our way in, nothing silly. Whereas under Klopp, I guarantee the message was, first 10 minutes we start like a freight train.
Yeah, and I think that's why they haven't missed, just the opposite of that is why they haven't missed the defensive number 6, because they've never been stretched, they've never just gone gung-ho and threw a lot of bodies forward and all of a sudden they get counter-attacked and it's like, oh my God. So that's why Gravenberch, I would imagine, is fitting in there and looks in place, doesn't look out of place, because he's just nice and settled in the middle of the park. The centre-backs aren't forcing balls in, they're not forcing the issue with players making runs, and they're just in control. So that's why he deserves credit. He deserves an awful lot of credit. That manager, his record has been superb. But now, as we go on in the season, the pressure of winning the league will start cranking up, especially if they open up a relatively nice cushion, which I think they will. So yeah, life is good if you're Liverpool at the minute.
Yeah, well, on the pressure on them, I mean, not that this alone will amp it up, but history is on their side. Only 6 teams, including Liverpool now, have had a 5-point lead 11 games in. So the other 5 all went on to win the league. So it's not a nothing lead 11 games in. By the way, Gravenberch not looking at a place. Caoimhin Kelleher looking very at home as well. Jeez,
absolutely.
He is of this level, isn't he?
He is making the case. I think that he could be Liverpool number 1 next year. I think with Alisson pushing on in age, injuries are creeping up. So they'll start looking at this now from the business point of view. Do we sell Alisson in the summer and just go with Kelleher, which I think would be a smart decision? Because if they don't and they go with Alisson, they might sell Caoimhin for, say, 40 as a figure. But to replace Alisson in 18 months' time from now will going to cost you 100, 120. So Liverpool will start looking at it that way. I know they signed that Georgian boy, I'm not going to attempt to pronounce his name, and put him out on loan. So I think they might have those 2 keepers next year with Caoimhin as number 1. I think it will be the smart decision. I think they've gotten everything they can get out of Alisson. They might recoup some money for him in the summer. If they, even if you got into, say, Saudi or back to Brazil, you get some money in the door for him. But the guy, in fairness to Caoimhin, and I'm not just saying this because he's from Cork, because I know that's what you're going to say next, Joe. I think he genuinely is every inch of Liverpool number 1, and he has not looked out of place. He's made every save he has to make. The players trust him. In possession, the centre-backs are quite happy to go back to him. They're quite happy to make angles. His distribution is as good as you're going to get in the Premier League. And why not? I just don't see any reason why not. From a business point of view, it makes sense.
You need luck in life, don't you? Because these 2 Alisson injury spells last season and this season have transformed his standing. Even the Irish jersey, I mean, it's really worked out for him. Just one last one on Liverpool. I heard you speaking on Virgin a couple of weeks ago about Salah, and just 32. He wants a 3-year deal.
Yeah.
you're like, oh, I don't know. It's when the legs go, they really go, and with him, it'll be a huge, a huge extent of what he has to offer if that physicality goes. He's set to become the first player across the 5 European big leagues this season to have 10 goals and 10 assists. Took the chance so well. Like, that should have been a really rushed, frantic chance, running from halfway at an angle. He just waits and waits and waits and waits and waits and makes the finish look so easy. I don't know. I'd say they're thinking about, you know what? Okay, if he's a dud for the last year, fine. Give us the next two.
Looking that way, Joe, it's hard to put up an argument against that. I still don't. I'd still be leaning towards he has to make a concession as well. That if you want 3 years, we can't give you that, and the club have to stand firm with that, because they have to draw a line and say with players past a certain age, we might get another 18 months out of him. And I will listen. I love Salah, and I think he's doing brilliant. And this is a tough argument to make. And I understand Liverpool fans will be screaming, going, "No, you give him what he wants." But the type of money he wants for the length of time that he wants, you might have to suck it up for the last year. I just think the club need to stand firm and say to him, "Look, we'll give you 2 years," and I think that's a fair compromise.
Is there ever a thing in negotiations whereby Mo will give you the money you want for 2 years, but then your money goes down year 3, and we have a series of bonuses or inducements? Are those kind of things?
Yeah, but the player will never admit. Yeah, they'll try it, but the player will never admit that. But why would you? Your value says I should get 3 years.
Okay.
But I think if he loves it, maybe there is a deal to be done there. But I think the club have to have a policy, and you might consider breaking it for him. But then if you break it for him, you'll have every player knocking on your door. And that is the problem with contracts in football, is once you break, the red line, then everyone comes knocking. Once you say, oh, by the way, we're only paying X amount of money, and then someone gets paid more than that, the pay structure moves. So I think they'll stand firm. I think there will be a deal done, though. But I still think the club need to stand firm with what they're doing.
So Man City, first time in Pep Guardiola's career he has lost 4 in a row. Bournemouth, again, Bournemouth are good, away from home tricky, and City had their chances laid on in that game. The second one is Spurs in the Carabao Cup. For me, ignore that. And then against with Sporting and Brighton at the weekend, in both first halves, City had more than enough chances to kill both games off. Now, they haven't, obviously. They're without Ruben Diaz, allied to Rodri. That gets a bit messy. So at the weekend, they had 19-year-old central defender making his debut, Hamai Simpson-Pusi, with Gore Vidal moved into centre-half with him. Rico Lewis was at left-back. No great worries about City. It's just a disjointed phase. Do you agree with that, or are you seeing something a little bit more pernicious worrying in the medium term?
I'll tell you what worried me most was Pep after the game, his comments, where he said something along the lines, paraphrasing here, but it was like, maybe it's time for someone else to win it, winning it 5 out of 6, maybe it's time for someone else. And I'm like going, Jesus almighty, he's starting to feel, that's a man that's just a little bit dejected. But look, every club, every manager has to deal with injuries. Arsenal had to deal with Odegaard missing, Rodri missing. He needs to find a solution to that. It's bloody huge. Because it's games like the last 4 that Rodri will get you 2 wins and 2 draws, just because you're not firing on all cylinders. You've got a young centre-back, and all of a sudden you get over the line against Lisbon, after going 1-0 up. And then, obviously the Bournemouth game gets you over the line as well. But those 2 players, Ruben Diaz and Rodri, are really, really putting pressure on Manchester City. It's tough to cope without it. But I think this is where Pep needs to earn his corner, really does. Life isn't always perfect. He's had a difficult time. He's still got Erling Haaland at the top end of the pitch scoring goals. So, young centre-back coming in, I think he looks a prospect. I think Vidal is going to end up as a centre-back, and I think over the next 5 years he's going to be probably the world's premier centre-back. I think he has just got everything. Mobility, pace, good on the ball. If he develops, and I think long-term he will be like the standout defender at world level, to be honest with you. So
going to miss him scoring 10 goals a season from left back. But
that's true as well. Yeah, that's true.
By the way, did you see Pep afterwards with Jan Paul van Heck?
No, I didn't see that.
Yeah, so Here, Van Heck and Haaland had been having, a bit of a tussle all game, and that was all, all was fair in love and war. But then maybe 5 minutes from the end, they sort of squared up to each other, and Van Heck sort of hit the ground holding his face kind of thing, and nothing came of it. But Pep is on the pitch afterwards, and it's like, again, it's a long Pep Guardiola lecture to Van Heck, who I think because of Guardiola's status in the game is sort of like nodding and listening and like taking it all on board. And like, I don't know.
It's unnecessary.
Just get out of my face. Like, who do you think you are?
Yeah, and listen, all those Man City players have done that in the past as well, gone down. That's just a sign of pressure showing on Pep. He's losing games now, and he's not thinking clearly, and pressure will do that to you.
You watched the game at Stamford Bridge. Arsenal got a draw. Oh yeah, okay. So what does that mean?
Oh yeah. Oh, Chelsea. Really hot on Chelsea.
Yeah, okay, good. I'm with you. They're
really good.
Yeah, go on. So tell us why.
Just like, first of all, expectations were low for them this year. I don't think anybody had. But my God, Maresca has got that team playing a brand of football, a style of football, and energy and intensity that is admirable. Chelsea seem to be involved in nearly every big game for the last 3 or 4 weekends. They're on the Super Sunday. Yeah. And I found myself watching them and really enjoying watching them. I mean, you got Madueke and Neto on the wings. Listen, Jackson is probably the only, I won't say negative, but the only weak point, I think. Cole Palmer is just a joy. I would pay money to watch him play football. His languid style, but his incredible genius is brilliant. They got young English centre-back in Colwell. They got Fofana. They have, the midfield, you wouldn't want to go up against them two, no. Lavia and Caicedo. I mean, they are two brutes. They can shift over the ground. They're quick, they're pacey, they're aggressive. There is a lot to like about this Chelsea team. We were talking earlier about challengers for Liverpool. I think, I'm not prepared to go to the limb just yet, but I think that they're going to be thereabouts. They're probably a centre-forward short. But if Jackson gets hot, which he can do, he can score goals, I think they'll be thereabouts. I really like what they're doing. Everything about them is brilliant. He's
very impressive, Maresca. Even pre-game, he was asked, you've left your captain out, Reece James. Is that because he's just back from injury, you're resting him? And he could have gone for that. He said, no, tactical. No, it's tactical. Yeah. And even Enzo Fernandez, listen, we all like what you're about and everything, but you don't quite fit, and the two boys are good, and Cole Palmer's Cole Palmer, so you're just not starting 11 anymore. All these decisions really kind of, brave is too strong a word, but he's got an authority about the place very, very quickly, and that's hard to do at Chelsea.
And results are good, and that helps the manager, obviously, when you can, because you can say that to Enzo, and what he said to Reece James is pretty much unheard of for the last 4 or 5 years with Reece James. He's been first name on the team sheet, and rightly so, but results are determining that the team stays as it is, and I think that's huge for players, because if you're a midfield player like Lavia and you're playing well, and all of a sudden Enzo's on the bench, and you kind of get dragged for no reason, it undermines the players that are playing. You're rewarding the ones that are getting the job done. Listen, the fact that they're involved in the Conference League is like, I just think, a shambles that a team of that level is and the Shamrock Rovers have to go there in a few weeks' time. But the fact that he didn't even put Cole Palmer in his European squad, he just left him out. And obviously that might be readdressed in January for the knockout stages. But players are fresh now. They essentially don't have European football because that team is totally different to the one that played midweek. So I think he has got so much right. It's so under the radar. I understand Chelsea are a lot of people don't like Chelsea, but you got to give them credit for what they are. They are an enjoyable watch, and they are going places fast.
Yeah, totally agree. Again, it's hard to be too excited because, with $1 billion spent, you couldn't say it's a plucky underdog value for money kind of venture, but it's coming together.
It is in a way, though, Joe. I know you say they spent $1 billion because, like, the $1 billion that was spent wasn't on over-the-hill stars that were not aging. It was a lot of young talent with the potential to get better, and I think they are showing that now. So Amorim got a good squad, but he's getting the most out of it, and I really like watching Chelsea at the minute.
Just on Cole Palmer, so again, like, everybody signed up to that fan club now. He could well emerge as the best English talent of his generation, and that's a fairly beefy generation. There was a moment where a graphic popped up in the game, and he'd had 2 touches in 15 minutes in the first half. And, Gary Neville remarked in commentary, Arsenal are, they're paying a lot of attention to him. They're doing a good job of trying to stop him get the ball. And around that time, he sort of looked a bit frustrated. And then a ball fell to him edge of the area, which I just think if he was in a flow and on the ball a lot, he would have controlled. It was a bit of a chance for him. And I thought to myself, and Neville he sort of said he's going to have to get used to this. And he was talking about like almost being double marked, or like teams really going out of their way to keep him out of the game. I thought it was an interesting comment. Cole Palmer probably will have a decade of kind of a bit like, can't get into the game here at times. He's either going to have to learn to live with the frustration of that and be ready when the ball does come to him, or two, find ways to get himself into the game under a lot of attention. I presume he'll figure that out one way or the other, but that is going to be his lot now increasingly. He is a marked man.
Absolutely, and deservedly so. I even listening to him in the interviews, he's got a laid back, nonchalant, almost disinterested, as in like, oh, are we playing football this weekend? And I think when that game started and he couldn't get into it, he doesn't panic. He just was like, I trust my ability. I know that I'll find space. Sometimes you're just figuring out what they're doing, because that's what the real top players do. Like if you have a system that's nullifying them, they'll just kind of stand still for 2 or 3 minutes and look around and take stock and go, okay. And then they'll come up with a solution themselves, and he will do that. I also don't think he's the type to panic or, flail arms. If he can't get into the game, he can't get into the game, but he trusts that he will. But I think Chelsea's a perfect fit for him now, because that club is going to grow, I believe, over the next number of years, and he will grow with it. And he will be the face, front and centre. He will be the main man, the Eden Hazard type figure for that football club over the next number of years, if not even better again. Yeah. He is so talented. And that's one that Pep might look back on in a couple of years.
Pep, I'm telling you, Pep, like, he doesn't have to answer questions to anyone because what he's done is extraordinary. He's not immune to making mistakes. That is a mistake, one way or another. Yeah. That is a mistake.
But he'll probably argue that he had to do it, financial fair play and all that, and they need to raise funds. And I think Gary Neville made that point a few weeks back, that financial fair play wasn't designed that clubs sell their best talent, especially the best English talent. Yeah. So I think that he will put that argument that we had to sell a player and we got offered.
There was a degree as well of Palmer wanting to go, because Pep was honest with him and said your first team opportunities here are limited. But that's the part I'd quibble. Maybe Pep should have, maybe actually, Cole, I'm going to get you into this side one way or another. Stay.
Yeah. Absolutely, I think so. And when you look at what he did with Foden, how patient he was with Foden. Remember Foden the first few years was in and out of the team, and people are thinking, why is he a good player? Where's he going? Should he leave? Now, obviously, Phil Foden has developed into what he has, and I think it probably would have been worth doing it for Cole Palmer as well, because if he could have found a way to get both of them in. But look, he probably didn't think he was going to go to Chelsea and do what he did, Cole Palmer, because he carried that team last year. His numbers were incredible. And I tell you what, I just find myself, when the game going on, I find myself just watching Cole Palmer drifting, and that's when you got a good player.
Yeah. Of those types of players that have the ability to stand still, take everything in a few minutes into a game or 15 minutes into a game and figure out the solution. So you would have come up against your fair share of them. And that's sometimes harder for us when you're kind of watching 22 players on a screen to kind of sense the intelligence. Who struck you of the guys you came up against as uber intelligent in that kind of a way?
I'll actually tell you a funny story about that. We were playing Man City away once. Pellegrini was the manager, and David Silva was peak David Silva. And we went up to the Etihad, and we had a game plan that we were going to man-mark David Silva because he was that good. So we got Joel Ward, who's our best 1v1 defender, to go and track him everywhere he goes. And obviously this was happening in front of me because he was playing in the 10 and Wardy was just following him everywhere. And I'd say after about 4 minutes, David Silva just stopped and looked at Wardy. And David Silva walked, I swear to God, over to the touchline towards the dugout on the halfway line and just stood there. And Joel Ward went with him and stood next to him. And then what ended up happening was Nasri came and played the 10. So now it was 10v10, so there's obviously not a lot more space. And after about 6 minutes, everyone was like, abandon the plan. And then David Silva just came and got back in again. So he knew, like, if I could make it 10v10, and all of a sudden Nasri started causing problems. But the likes of those players, Hazard and, Fabregas and these guys, like, if you set up a plan, they figure out themselves. They know. They're just like, okay, fine, you want to take that away from me? I can go and do this if you want. And then all of a sudden the plan gets just sprayed everywhere and it just gets very, very difficult. And that's what top players, game intelligent players do. And regardless of what people say about footballers, they are super game smart, those top level players.
Well, like you listen to Palmer, he does, but the intelligence of him, they're all different kinds. So what are we saying about Arsenal then? Are they like, can I make a fool of myself here? But like, I think they're done. I don't think this is happening this year for them, honestly. And all year, like even when they went to City and got the point, I think people have misread that game. They were destroyed in that first half. And I mean, like, City took them apart, and they just, a great strike from distance. And like, I think they're kind of overly identifying themselves as a set piece team now. Like, it's like, oh God, a set piece, as opposed to, can we try and score in general play a little bit? I don't actually see it this year. There's something really off with them.
Yeah, I wouldn't go as far as what you're saying. There's something off with them. I don't think they're done by any stretch of the imagination. I think they're just having a little bit of a lull, but they're still picking up results, and I think that's impressive because they've not played well. They've had a couple of red cards where they've been lost a few points.
Yeah.
I think last year they put so much into it, and they came up short, and they've just started the season a little bit slow. But it's not like they're where Manchester United are, or they're not like they're in the bottom half of the table. They're still just hovering on the periphery, and Man City are struggling a little bit too. Liverpool have obviously taken advantage of those slip-ups, but I think Arsenal will get it going. Declan Rice looks out of sorts to me.
I think he's a broken toe is the word at the moment.
Yeah, I know, but even before that, he looks a little bit leggy. That guy's been on the treadmill for about 5 or 6 years now, playing 70, 80 games a year. I mean, and by the way, like I think the stat during the Euros is he covered the most distance of any player in the whole tournament. I remember reading that in terms of total distance. He puts in a shift, and he has been doing that for a long time now, carrying West Ham in Europe. So maybe he's just having a little bit of a lull at the moment. I'm not sure what the Marino signing has kind of worked out. I know that they wanted to get him in because Partey was so in and out of the team. Centre-backs are keeping them together, to be honest, Saliba, Gabriel, and the goalkeeper as well. Havertz just dips in and out, and I think Odegaard then makes him tick, and him missing, they lost so much. But I think if he's back now and they can keep him fit, it will be a worry that they're that dependent on one player. That if he ever gets a red card or if he ever gets an injured ever again, it's huge issues for Arsenal. So I think he'll be addressing that in the summer, or in the transfer window possibly, that we need to find another way of playing if Odegaard isn't there, because God forbid he'd get a long-term injury like Rodri, and Pep has to figure out how to play without Rodri. Kovacic isn't the answer at the base of that midfield. So I think both teams will be active, or trying to be active in January. But yeah, I don't think Arsenal done. I think they'll be top 4 for sure.
Oh, sorry, top 4. I just mean I'm saying
bubble has burst with them. You mean?
No, they're not winning the league this year. I think they're already too far back. I don't think they'll chase City down for 5 points. And we have to see how Liverpool go. So I don't see.
Yeah, I think Liverpool are going to have a blip as well at some point in the season. They're obviously working hard too with the European, the two fronts. Liverpool will have their blip, absolutely, but I think Arsenal will be top 3, challenging right up to maybe Paddy's Day, thereabouts. But
sorry, we agree then. We that's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah, I agree. That's
okay. So your statement of they're done
from winning the title point. of
view. Fair enough. I thought you meant as a club. They were going back to.
No. Let's sack Arteta. No.
Conference League, and
just from a title point of view. I mean,
fair enough.
They could get it together, win Champions League. Like, they could do something, but I just think already it's tricky for them. Before we jump on to Ireland, Finland, and I want to get a word on Ruben Amorim's appointment. I haven't heard you on that yet. You want to touch on Ange and Spurs from 4-1 winners against Villa last week to losing at home to Ipswich?
Yeah, well, you just mentioned Arsenal being done there. I'm on the verge of being done with Ange, to be honest with you.
Oh no!
And his high line and his funny formations and his intricate things. It's starting to wear thin a little bit now. You can't beat Villa 4-1 and then lose to Ipswich and Crystal Palace both got their one and only wins of the season against them. I don't know. He has to make alterations. He just has to make some changes. He has to make some adjustments. And start managing the games a little better. I get that we all have principles and ideas and values and we won't veer from them. But at some point he has to say, look, we're not in a good spot right now. We're not playing particularly well. So we need to just have a little bit of a more subtle version of what I'm doing and just get some bloody wins.
But so not to remind you of things you've said a long time ago, because that's always never fair. I remember after that, like that Monday Night Football against Chelsea, where it was like a caricature, you were like, amazing. This is exactly as I love this, and now you're saying no.
I'm not saying no. I'm saying that he needs to have a plan B. I agree. When he first came in, he was getting results, and all of a sudden you thought, "Oh, this is going somewhere."
Yeah,
he just seems to be beating his head against that door, and it's not quite working for him right now. The Chelsea one was an exceptional one in fairness.
It was.
That was brilliant. But they very nearly got something out of it. But I mean, that's literally, you're throwing darts in the dark there, with that.
But when they're good, they're seriously good. Like the second half against Villa last week was a joy to watch.
Yeah, but you can't get away with that for too long, I mean, you have to find, you're going to have days where that's not working, and it's so high risk, it's so high intensity that the days it's not quite there. You need to figure out a way to beat the likes of Ipswich, and when you're on and you're in form, you can maybe do it. But I just think that a lot of teams are figuring out now as well what he's doing with the high line and the full-backs and the funny shapes. And, when you turn the ball over, and that's what we call transition, is like, all the good stuff happens in football at that point, when a team loses the ball within 5 seconds or 7 seconds of a team losing the ball. That's where all the good stuff in football happens. Yeah. And I just think that Spurs are just hopeless in transitions when they turn the ball over. Right. Because they're so high risk. They're so, intent on his way. And listen, his way of playing up at Celtic would have worked when they're playing Partick Thistle or whoever it may be, because when you turn the ball over, they might not be very good in transition. But the higher up the levels you go, the players are just ultra efficient when you lose the ball, and they're just getting exposed, in behind, and when the ball, because players are going to give the ball away, and you can't be that open when you give the ball away.
Okay, that's a very fair point. Ruben Amorim?
Yeah, interesting one. Really interesting, actually. I think he's a really good manager. I think he's going to do really great things. Will he be given the time? I think the most telling thing about what happened with Ruben Amorim was when the story broke that he wanted to wait till the end of the season. And I don't think that was anything to do with his love of sporting. I think that was to do with looking at this current Manchester United squad, and 2 more transfer windows would have helped him no end. Because I think he will have assessed the squad and went, can I get any more out of it than what Erik ten Hag was? Probably get a little bit more. I might even get top 6, top 5 maybe. Might win a League Cup or whatever. But I think the new manager bounce that he's looking for is that by the time he gets to next summer, he's already going to be under pressure, because everyone's expecting him to come in and turn it around. And I think he's probably looked at the squad of players and realised, I can't turn much around with that. Whereas if I came in the summer, there was 4 or 5 players gone, 4 or 5 players in, all of a sudden now I have a wave of optimism and I'm going to fly into the start of the next season. Whereas I think he's going to be answering some very difficult questions by Paddy's Day, to be honest with you.
Right.
I think he's going to be, question marks coming in against him. I just hope the fans, the media understand that it's going to take, I said 6 transfer windows. It'll definitely take 3, I would imagine, for him to start putting a stamp on this team. And the key thing is getting the players out of the football club that aren't capable of playing Ruben Amorim's style or modern style of football. They have no legs in that team. Everybody knows that. I think I've said that to you before, Joe. They're full of players who can't run or won't run. Either which way, the result is the same. You have a team that don't run or can't run. So he's going to be looking at that squad now going, okay, I can't play the way I want to play. The high intensity, high pressing, high octane football. So I need to figure out a way now to get this team to the end of the season with my reputation some way intact. So that's what he's going to be doing right now, because you might not see the true Ruben Amorim unless he goes nuclear and just says, you know what, I'm just going to go in the youth team. And if you look at United's youth team, under 21s, I think the youth team, I saw a thing the other day, the youth team are 8 wins out of 8, scored 40 goals in 8 games. So there's some serious talent in the 18s, there's some serious talent in the 21s. A couple of players, a guy called, I think there's 2 players, one from Stockport called Ethan Wheatley and Ethan Williams. I mean, you look at those players and their numbers, what they put up last year, and they're only young, they're only 18. But with Ruben Amorim's track record of getting young players, developing them, getting them into a system that they understand, it might be time for a new class of 92, Joe. It could be.
Yeah.
It could be. And that's probably the quickest way to do it. But obviously he'd be, lumbered with a load of players and probably about £1 million a week that, they can't really shift.
Just before you go then, Ireland-Finland is on Thursday, 7:45, and then already a slightly treacherous England away on Sunday at 5 o'clock is on the horizon. So Hallgrimsson was talking last week around the squad announcement. First of all, on the charm offensive. So I've been trying to learn the national anthem. It's hard because he looked like he was trying to sing it in Helsinki. It's one thing to know how to sing it, but then you forget the words. But I will get it at one point. National anthem is something you should take pride in learning. I'm trying my best. So everybody kind of, even though they know he's playing us, they're like, can't help but like that all the same. And then he said something which has been long said about the team. And it's funny because, this has been said about the team for several years, and you kind of, you're like, is that true? I guess maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But he sort of said against Greece, once we'd nothing to lose, we were really good. It was the same against Finland. Once we had nothing to lose, we were really good. Something we have to improve upon. And then he was talking about, it is in part psychology for sure. Do we need to bring somebody into the camp in that area? We've discussed it. And then he said, maybe it's not a good moment right now, 7-day camp, to bring someone in and change some things. But I think if we want to bring someone in like that, as an observer maybe in the beginning, then they might build up trust with the players and we go from there. So I thought that's interesting that already he's kind of identified something that is said about the team. It's like, they have to go 1-0 down to start playing. And how do we do that when we're at 0-0? Do you agree with that point? Do you sense that in this team?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
really. I mean, you can see it. But you got to go back further, that this is a team that has been used to getting beat for a long time. Over the last 4 years, we have lost a lot of games to a lot of really poor teams, right? And that the weight of that drags confidence out of players, rips the confidence out of them. They're not used to winning games. You go back through some of our results, regardless of what people say, and this is not me having to go with the previous regime or anything like that. Nothing to do with that. I'm just saying that this is a team that's been used to getting beat, and the psychology of this team now is that we can't win games of football, and that's what he's taken over. And this team needs to find a way. And he obviously has identified that, and I think it's a fair point. I agree with him as psychologists. It's hard to come in. Players never met him before. You meet him for 7 days. You need to trust sports psychologists and stuff like that. So it's hard to build trust in that amount of time. But he has to find a way, and the only way to do that is winning a game. We won against Finland.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how, but we've won a game. So all of a sudden now the feeling around the squad is an awful lot better. We've won a game of football. And if we can beat Finland and all of a sudden we can go 1-0 up in the first half and then score again in the second half and win 2-0, all of a sudden we're climbing out of that fear that we have. I mean, as a player, Joe, if you're playing games of football and you're losing or drawing against Armenians, Luxembourgs, Azerbaijans, you can go through the list of what was the stat? The only team we beat was Gibraltar twice and maybe Scotland, I think. So we'd one win in 4 years against a team that was ranked around us and nothing ranked higher than us, right? So that takes its toll. Like, you go into any workplace and if you're getting battered every day, your confidence is going to be low. So he needs to rebuild that. And that is an interesting comment. And I'm glad that he's thinking about something like that, because it means that he's recognising that they need to build confidence. But he obviously feels that he can do that at the moment with his,
Just one last interesting one on that is that, excuse me, Matt Doherty has been called into the squad now because Coleman is injured. So Doherty was left out of the last squad, obviously. And then he did an interview with the 42 where he kind of, I mean, it's a quote. He was like, obviously I should be in the squad. It wasn't I appreciate I haven't been in good form and I'm going to work my backside off to get back in. It was kind of I should be in the squad. So now because of Coleman's injury, he's in. I don't know. You'd love to see a response from him. But I'm not sure if he's kind of thinking, well, look, I should be in the squad and I've no case to answer here after his mistake against Greece and the way he's played over the last year or two. I'm not sure what Matt Doherty, Damien, which is a real pity because obviously there's so much there.
Yeah, he's a really good player. And I hear he's a really, really nice guy, so it's difficult to criticise him.
Okay.
But his body language is just terrible. And I don't know if he recognises that or he sees that as a problem. But and I wouldn't even say it's a perceived lack of effort, because sometimes there he's running and you're like, come on, Matt, you can run more than that. Like even the goal against Greece at the Aviva there, like, and as a defender, right, you're running and the guy is going to get a shot on goal, more than likely going to score. But if you watch him at the end, he just tails off to the left, right? Now, as a defender, right, you're going to like do everything. I've seen players shout, scream, whistle. You're trying to break that player's concentration, because as that ball is coming across the goal onto his foot, the player is watching it intently. Like, listen, I'm not saying there's going to be any coaching manuals, but you're just trying to like break his concentration. And sometimes if the attacker sees a pair of orange boots coming into the periphery of his vision, like he might just hurry up, take it a little bit earlier, and he might miss connection. And I mean, listen, you're in the 0.1% chance of it. But You don't just run away and give him an uneasy thing. Like, like there was a thing before, like if a cross is coming in the box, like, and usually as a centre back, as soon as that ball is a third of the way there, I'm not getting this. Like, and the centre forwards have to pull it off your shoulder. You always still jump, right? Because if you jump, you might get down the line of the ball and it breaks. Whereas if a centre forward can watch the ball all the way and he's going to meet it with his forehead, that's why you see so many headers sometimes, coming off people's shoulders or their ear or their nose. It's because if you jump, they lose sight of the ball reappears. So, like, you're just doing anything to stop a goal going in. And sometimes when you watch Matt, you think, is he really doing everything he can do here? Is he killing himself? He trots back, he jogs, which, is his style, but it doesn't look good when you're losing games of football. So that's something I think he's going to have to address, get the intensity back in his game that I think he had when he initially burst on the scene from Wolves. Am I right in saying that Matt was a centre forward at Bowes when he first went up?
Yeah.
But like, he doesn't have that natural defender's instinct. It is a very kind of casual winger attacker type instinct. So he needs to learn that if he wants to be a defender. So it's up to him now. He's back in the squad. I'm surprised that he put him back in after leaving him out, because I thought he was going to make Matt almost like a focal point of like, we're moving on. We're not accepting that anymore. But I think he's brought him back in the squad, and it's up to Matt now to have a reaction. And if he does get on the pitch, show some urgency, show some intensity, and some real desire to get results for Ireland, because that's what ultimately people want to see.
Damien, brilliant.
Cheers, Joe.